Before we get into the meat and potatoes of this video, we need to discuss how frame data works. Frame data is useful for determining exactly how fast a move is, which can give us an indication as to who has the speed advantage.
I had a guy in Montreal that was measuring frames. He was watching fight and he was making a frame with image. So when someone threw a punch, click, 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 click. And by doing that, he was able to know who has better reaction times than others.
We can calculate the frame data for a move by slowing down the footage, going frame by frame at 60 FPS. Counting the individual frames from when a move starts to when a move lands to get a precise measurement of speed. One problem is that the UFC uploads its regular fight footage in 30 FPS and its slow motion footage in 120 FPS. So we have to multiply by 2 at 30 FPS and divide by 2 at 120 FPS to get our standard 60 FPS measurement. Take this punch for example at 120 FPS. The second Roofy's fist starts moving forward and we can see motion blur, we know he's firing the punch. So we can start counting. He has reached his target in 20 frames, so we divide by 2, and now we can comfortably say that his cross is frame 10 at 60 FPS. Then we can find more crosses and take the average to get an accurate speed of Roofy's cross. By and large, it is exceedingly rare to see a punch thrown faster than 8 frames and also uncommon to see one slower than 16 frames. The higher the weight class, the slower we can expect a fighter's hand speed to be, but that is not always the case. Back when I started researching for the Curtis Blades versus Rizvan Kuniev matchup, a fight that would get canceled due to Blades falling ill and pulling out of the competition, I came across something that I almost couldn't believe. I was rewatching Aspinall versus Blades 2. The fight begins with Blades looking very composed, showing quick hands for a big man with an 11-frame jab and a 12-frame cross. He even lands a nice left hook and jab on Tom in their first few exchanges. One glaring problem in this fight, however, is that Blades starts nearly every exchange with his jab, and only a minute into the fight, Tom has the timing down. So when Blades tries throwing his 11-frame jab again, this happens. Aspinall counters with a 6-frame jab. Using his footwork to get off the center line and his momentum to close the distance to the target, Tom sits Blades down and the rest is history. Having reviewed thousands of punches using this frame-by-frame analysis, I can say with full confidence that this is the fastest punch I've ever seen thrown in an MMA match.
Did you even see me? I was so damn fast.
It's almost imperceptible when watched at full speed. And this led me down a rabbit hole, reviewing every exchange in Tom Aspinall's UFC career to find out exactly how fast he really is and what makes him a Terminator inside the octagon. First thing to note, Tom usually starts with the jab and always alternates hands. You won't catch him doubling up in the pocket unless he has his opponent hurt or is looking for an opening when his opponent is shelled up on the wall. And while it was his jab that sat Blades down, the real finisher is Tom's right hand. Aspinall loads this thing up right after the jab and can throw it with speeds ranging from 8 to 10 frames with knockout power. And while most heavyweights have a frame 12 jab and frame 14 cross, that means that Aspinall can get off 3 punches to his opponent's 2. Aspinall is able to do this by taking a big step in to close the distance and by sacrificing hip and shoulder turnover for speed. Being as big as he is, he can easily knock someone out without textbook punches. As you can see, these are not Roofy-level picturesque punches, nor do they need to be. They are still deadly due to Tom's size and snap, and they always get to their target first. And that is Tom's main objective. He wants to get to his opponent before they get to him, which is why we see him land sloppily with his wrists sometimes. Also, Tom is not afraid to trade. He wants his opponent throwing punches to get his opponent's hands away from his face. Tom knows he has the speed advantage in the pocket. Here's a fun fact. In Aspinall's UFC career, he has only had the reach advantage one time. Just like Topuria, he wants to pressure you, make you trade, and knock you out on the inside with superior boxing. Aspinall also uses his punches to block. Because of his ability to throw so quickly, Tom usually ends up blocking any incoming punches with his arms. Something I keep seeing more and more of are these arm blocks. punches that are being blocked by active punches. And it makes sense. If a fighter constantly has a higher volume of active moves being thrown, the higher the likelihood of clashing with his opponent's moves he has. And while this is definitely not the most advisable defensive technique, it seems to be working just fine for fighters like Aspinall and Topuria. And as previously mentioned, this is to the advantage of Tom, as he will be the one who gets another punch out before his opponent's hands are even back to defending. And once he sits you down, his ground and pound and submission game is next to none. It's simply hard to sneak in a strike between the volume that Tom exudes. Tom does get hit occasionally, but it always seems to be on his terms, and he is extremely difficult to combo due to how many active frames he has and his incredible spatial awareness. Another interesting thing is Aspinall's use of the chest punch. My best guess is this is a way for Aspinall to get his opponent off balance, which would obviously benefit him in the trade if his opponent can't find his footing and can't throw with any real sting. Or he could be finding a reference point by hitting the chest to hone in on his eventual target, his opponent's head. So let's talk about Tom's frame data.
We need to talk about your TPS reports.
It is difficult to find a punch from Aspinall that exceeds frame 10. Most of his jabs, crosses, and hooks and everything in between, from when they are thrown to when they hit his opponent, are between frames 8 and 10. In fact, it is often hard to distinguish Tom's hooks from jabs or crosses. They are by no means textbook, but they are fast and tight and powerful, which makes up for any lack of technique. I've heard commentators applaud Tom for having welterweight speed, when in reality, Tom Aspinall has featherweight speed. It's even hard to find top lightweights with this kind of frame data. And to be fair to the lower weight classes, they do have to find more rotation to deliver harder blows, and many of them do reload punches on the same side, like Topuria, making them way more dynamic strikers. But Tom is still an anomaly. Aspinall's kicking speed is less freakish, still faster than most of the heavyweight roster, but definitely on the same level as the top middleweights and light heavyweights. Let me know if you'd like a Tom Aspinall versus John Jones move-by-move comparison using frame data, in case that fight happens, which I doubt it will.